Back in July of this year, I produced a video theorising some ideas on what could potentially be the storyline or plot for the third instalment in the Red Dead Redemption series, but today we're going to be looking at the other side of the coin and discuss why Rockstar Games may abandon this idea entirely. Many of the ideas that are floated around the internet may look good on paper, and people may believe them to be excellent choices, myself included, but there are a few that in my opinion just wouldn't work in a Wild West setting, so we'll be breaking down a few of these popular theories and looking at why they wouldn't fit. As a bit of a disclaimer to myself, this video is strictly theory, as we've had no official word on whether the company are or are not heading in this direction. Welcome to the video. You're listening to Phil. If you guys enjoy the following, be sure to hit that like button, and if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing as well. I produce new videos every single week. If you wish to get in touch with video ideas or anything like that, you can find me over on the channel's Instagram page, that's at PhilBGaming, and if you really enjoy the content, I also have a Patreon page set up, which you'll find linked in the video description. With that being said, let's get into what we came here to see. Probably the most popular theory to Red Dead Redemption 3 is that the story will go even further back than 1899. Many believe the protagonist this time around will be Dutch van der Linde, telling the story of the formation of the gang, potentially with added flashbacks to his childhood, giving more information on his father's death, his strained relationship with his mother, and his general disobedience. It could show his early relationship with Hosea after the pair met, when he discovered a young Arthur Morgan and then later John Marston, and the formation of the rest of the members, as each came in from all walks of life, right up until the Blackwater ferry heist, which as we know is the beginning of Red Dead Redemption 2. This is a story that no doubt seems intriguing, and it's something I'd love to see myself, but here's the issue. This story has already been told. During the events of RDR2, we do learn quite a bit of the backstory to the Van der Linde gang, such as John leaving temporarily, Hosea frequenting in and out with Bessie, and Arthur losing his son Isaac to bandits. But if you spend enough time at the fire pit during late night talks with the other gang members, you will eventually hear all of their past histories and how they phoned in with Dutch. Even if some of these interactions are missed, the official game guide to RDR2 gives us the information anyway. There are some explained characters that of course a prequel could provide information on, such as the Calendar Boys or Jenny Kirk or the unnamed gang member who was killed for his betrayal, but is it enough to justify an entire game? Red Dead Redemption 2 saw the passing of Arthur. It's something we all knew was coming, as there was no mention of him in RDR1, but by the time 1911 came around, every remaining member of the Van der Linde gang had either perished or abandoned the outlaw life entirely. Tilly married and had at least one child, Pearson settled down in Rhodes, both Sadie and Charles had left the country, and Mary Beth had become a famous author. The others that survived the initial 1899 story were either killed or captured by John Marston before his death in 1911. My point is that we all know the backstories to each member, their time with the gang, and their life after the fact if they had one to live. There's not much left to tell. It feels like it would just be filling in time gaps. Another theory is that the story told could tell the life of Jack after Red Dead Redemption 1 had ended in 1914. I did suggest this plot in the previous video, and I still believe it would be a fantastic story to tell, but there are issues as to why I couldn't make it as Red Dead Redemption 3. For starters, we need to look at the timelines. In 1899, the Wild West was becoming more tamed as the Pinkerton Detective Agency, alongside the local law, were clamping down on outlaw gangs. This continued on in 1911, where the now rebranded Bureau of Investigation continued on with this work. By the time this was all said and done, the Wild West was now just the West. Jack's solo story begins in 1914, at the beginning of the First World War. Although the United States didn't join until 1917, Jack would no doubt have been recruited for his service. The only way to tell a story like this without making it a war game would be to show Jack's military life in a series of flashbacks. This would be such a fantastic tale to tell, but we still have an issue as to what year it is. It would have to have been after 1918, when the Great War ceased. He may have still lived on his family's ranch, but the world was now very different to the one he grew up in. In 1920, America officially went dry. Prohibition, embodied in the US Constitution's 18th Amendment, banned the sale, manufacture, and transportation of alcohol. This was when moonshining became an issue for the authorities. On top of this, you also had the mafia making waves in the US at this time. Rockstar Games could certainly write a story for Jack Marston, but it would have to be more of a mafia-ruled era or a war story. It couldn't be a Wild West game like the first two, as the timeline is too far away. This would rule it out as a Red Dead title, and would have moved on over to something completely different, and unfortunately for them, a story of mafia involvement with military history has already been told, as in Vito Scaletta from 2K's Mafia 2. Many believe that Red Dead Redemption 3 could fill the gaps between 1899 and 1911. Now I understand that we do have some information on these years, but I'm referring to Dutch van der Linde and the formation of his new gang, consisting of mostly Native Americans. After the disbandment of the van der Linde gang, Dutch just disappeared for several years. We know that he reunited with Micah in 1907 briefly, but after he walked away from John and Sadie, the next 4 years became a mystery. By the time the Bureau of Investigation catch up with John at Beach's Hope, thus triggering the events of Red Dead Redemption 1, Dutch has already formed a new posse of outlaws and is now hiding in the snowy mountains in coconut tall trees in the state of West Elizabeth. But just how did this formation begin? Towards the end of Red Dead 2, Dutch had made ties with the Wapiti tribe, so it's quite possible that he may still have some connections with them, or failing that, using his charm and past experiences with groups such as this, he knew exactly how to rally them up. This story would definitely have been an interesting one to take part in, possibly as a new character who's part of the newly formed Dutch's Boys, but wouldn't this just be a similar repeat to the story of the original Van der Linde gang? A bunch of rebellious young men angry with the government who are led astray by a silver-tongued maniac before they collapse. We all saw the mental decline of Dutch during his latter days of the 19th century, and by the time we see him once more in 1911, he's fallen further into a darker mindset, and a story detailing the events leading up to this would be fascinating, and certainly give us insight to a lot of unanswered questions. But once again, we're running into the same problem. We already know the end. What makes a good story is the unknown. I understand Arthur's death was expected beforehand in Red Dead Redemption 2, but Rockstar did this in a clever way. Where John was killed off in a manner which shocked just about everybody, Rockstar Games wrote Arthur's death as the opposite with a tuberculosis diagnosis, and we watched him deteriorate over time before his passing. As far as Dutch's life, we all saw that outcome too. It seems that we already know too much of this story already, albeit missing segments, for Rockstar Games to really pursue this as a theme for Red Dead Redemption 3. Another popular one is Colm O'Driscoll and his boys. Dutch and Colm go way back, and both formed their respective gang at around the same time. During our playthrough of RDR2, we do learn a little of Colm and his history with Dutch, but we know very little about his gang. It would be an interesting tale to tell about how the O'Driscolls came to be, but here's an issue. Most video games prefer to portray the protagonist as the hero, as not many people would cheer on the villain, and Colm is just plain evil, so I'm not sure stepping into his boots would be a popular choice for players. They may have gotten away with using a single member of the gang as the protagonist, but unless Colm started off as a better person before he became the man we'd meet in 1899, that would put our new character as someone who maintains a little evil way themselves, once again going back to the hero theory. Rockstar couldn't really make Colm become more wicked as time progressed, as this would be just the story of Red Dead Redemption 2 repeated, told with a new set of characters. We're also hitting the same problems as we've seen using characters we already know. We know how their story ends. Colm was hung in 1899, and his right-hand guy, the man who killed Sadie's husband, Jake Adler, met his end soon after, thus putting an end to the O'Driscolls. Colm seemed to have found peace towards the latter part of his life, feeling remorse for his actions, so this could have been intriguing to learn, but again, there are just too many things we already know to tell a story like this. As I said, what makes a good story is the unknown. Many players wish to see the stories of several of the Vanderlyn gang members, such as the history of the Wild Calendar Boys for example. Davy and Matt Callender are spoken about briefly in RDR2. One passes away during the Blackwater escape and the other dies in the custody of the Pinkertons, but when the gang speak of them, it's always how such good fighters they were. A story of the upbringing of the pair would be interesting to see, but once again, we know how it ends. Both Charles and Sadie are a popular choice too. Many wish to see what happened to them both after 1907 when they departed from John and his family. Charles went north to find a wife and settle down after seeing the Marston family together, and Sadie headed in the opposite direction to the south with the intention of working as security for gold prospectors in Mexico, both of which are during a time that the Wild West was coming to a close. Javier and Bill split from the group after Beaver's Hollow, and they went their separate ways from one another, so a story of what happened to them before John caught up with the pair in 1911 would be intriguing to know, like how Javier made ties with his local government as just years before he was forced to flee his country due to the bounty on his head, or how Bill formed the Williamson gang, who now resided at Fort Mercer. But once more, we know how their story ends already. In the previous video I produced, which I'll leave as the end screen to this one, I spoke about what the potential plot of Red Dead Redemption 3 could be, my personal favourite being the life of Landon Ricketts, and it's something I think you'll enjoy if you like today's content, so be sure to check it out. In closing, this video is just speculation. Rockstar may take any of these potential plots and make them work for sure, but again, what makes a good story is the unknown. To tell a Wild West tale, the game would of course have to be set during that era, which would debunk some of these ideas. If they were to tell a story post-1914, such as Jack Marston's, it wouldn't be a Western tale, but something completely different. So would it really be a Red Dead Redemption title? I think it would have to be something completely new. On the opposite, if they were to go back to the American West, it would have to be a new character or gang entirely, telling a new story. Otherwise, we would all know how it would end. Let me know your thoughts as to what the story of RDR3 could be or couldn't be in the comment section below. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. You've been listening to Phil. If you wish to get in touch, you can find me over on the channel's Instagram page, that's at PhilBGaming. If you enjoyed what you saw today, be sure to give the video a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing too. Also please remember, if you wish to show your utmost support, the channel does have a Patreon page, which you'll find linked in the video description. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.